I had to work out what it meant to be a gender non-conforming person who wanted to also act. And I briefly thought, and not in, again, not in a particularly sort of regretful way even. I thought, oh, that you can't have both. You sort of have to choose. And I sort of didn't mind that because I'm a sort of closeted workaholic. So at the time, I sort of felt it felt like a clear, yeah, it felt like a sort of necessary evil of
Right.
something that from which I derived a lot of joy. I don't know. And
So do you feel
obviously
like at that time, in those early years, I mean, are you leading a split? Like you're not hiding anything, but you are leading a different kind of identity for the purpose of, I don't know, making folks comfortable or what? I mean, I get it. It's a confusing. These things have shifted very quickly in the last few years, and I can
yeah,
only
they have.
imagine.
And I
Yeah.
was quite like slow to the language also. It's not like I could explain myself, like
Right.
for a long time I couldn't explain myself. And I suppose when I joke about having no personality in high school, like probably the beginning of a battle was taking place that again I had no language for,
Right.
and in some way like I couldn't help but mark myself out. It was by accident, but some of that internal warfare was presenting itself externally, and that didn't help in the process of making, finding a tribe, as you put it. But
Got it.
and then in my like sort of yeah like early 20s it was only after I left university that sort of language started to reach me that felt applicable to the experience that had been playing itself out for the sort of previous 10 years and longer. I had like I think in the process of trying to get an agent, which is what I understood one had to do if one wanted to be an actor. And although I wasn't maybe admitting aloud that that's what I wanted to do, I sort of, like somewhere in the private corner of my psyche, that was a sort of quiet ambition. And I think in the process of that, I began presenting in a way that was more feminine for like the sort of for the first time. I mean, not particularly extreme, but I sort of grew my hair and like
Right.
I had the markers of a of a woman actor. And then I did get an agent and that was great. And I suddenly had this panic that uh I'd like misled him and that I had fettered myself to something I couldn't live as. And I had a real sort of meltdown about it and I didn't know what to do because I thought I duped this lovely man and possibly got both what I wanted and didn't want simultaneously. And yeah, and I just didn't know how to navigate it. And at that time, it wasn't clear that, I mean, it's so strange, right? Because my job is transformation is built into what we
Literally.
do,
Yes.
quite literally. And um, I don't think there's any surprise in the fact that the job I do allowed me to sort of run away from myself in some aspect a lot of the time. Maybe my gestation period in my life has been longer because I've spent like periods of it as other people, like um uh but yeah, and the industry is remains and certainly was at the start of my career pretty conservative
Yeah.
when it comes to casting. And actually, like weirdly, there's sometimes I think a slight imaginative failure when it comes to casting. Like, actually, we have such extraordinary technology in sort of hair, makeup, and costume for transformation. It needn't feel like an obstacle, and yet, for like many reasons,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's been like an amazing period of learning that you can have both and that you can live in the gaps in a way that is you know, comfortable and satisfying and also go and do your work and yeah.
So when House of the Dragon happens for you and you actually get the role, do they bring up how would you like to identify? Like, I mean, is that something you brokered with them? Is that a touchy? I mean, like, it's a touchy thing to discuss, and this is a big moment in your life and career for a thousand different reasons. Can you take me through the thought process of like this is the time to shift
Yeah.
professionally?
Yeah. So as you say, so I had prior to that, I had separated my sort of personal and professional selves
Yeah.
and for for many reasons. But yeah, actually it was HBO that came to us, and I think part of that was in a very, very small way. I think there was some evidence of my like gender identity, like sort of on the internet or whatever. But they came to me and said, at the point at which we start, releasing press packets about this show and stuff, how do you want to be referred to? And I did really think about it, but I think I worried about repeating this moment of feeling like I'd imprisoned myself with my agent again in a sort of
Right.
far more public forum. And at the time, it felt like I was making a decision with potential sort of ramifications that I couldn't yet understand. Like if I would have to make a similar decision now, I would have a much better sense of the parameters of something like that. But at the time, I didn't have a profile. Like I just
Right.
couldn't
Knew something
really
big was happening, but like it's still hard to actually wrap your brain around what's coming, I'm sure. Yeah.
totally, totally. Yeah, and so then we just said yeah, and then rather than being two people, I was one person, just like that.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate to have, I guess, come into all of this at the point that I did, because actually a few years previously, the conversation would have been completely different.
Right.
And or non-existent, or I would have had to have a sort of formal sit down with everyone, later. Like I don't really, that's not really like my way, but I think I was very lucky with the timing.